What's going on? I'm Justin Voss, and in this video, I'm going to be going over the Everlast PowerTIG 255 EXT. I've had this machine for a little while now, and I've gotten some great use out of it on some recent projects, and Everlast actually asked if I would be interested in doing an overview video on it. So thank you to Everlast for sponsoring this video. I'll leave a link to them down below. It's not going to be a review. I'm not going to do a paid welding review, but I will happily show you all the features this thing has from a TIG perspective. I don't do a lot of stick welding, so I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but I have some aluminum here, some steel here, so we're going to go over all the AC features, all the DC features, and yeah, I'm going to get this thing turned on, and let's get going through the menu. I actually have Everlast PowerCool W300 hooked up to my machine. It's all sitting on their PowerCart 250. The cart wasn't too bad putting it together. The instructions weren't super clear, but either way, it wasn't too hard. A cool thing is that the water cooler hooks right into the back of the machine, so there's only one switch to turn on, and the connections on the front of the 255 are DIN style 35 connectors, and it does not have the hole through the center of the torch lead. It's a separate hookup, and the trigger and pedal hook up through a 7-pin connector. One of my favorite features of this machine is the purge button. If you're setting up, you can just hit the button, set your gas, and then hit the button again to stop it. You don't actually have to like hit your pedal or anything to get the arc going. The regulator you just saw is included with the machine. Speaking of things that are included, this is the stinger that comes with it, and this is a torch trigger that comes with it. It comes attached to the torch. I took it off because I pretty much only use the pedal and everything I do here. And then this is a 240 to 120 volt adapter. This goes right on the end of the existing 6-foot cord. You can hear the machine's fan running all the time. That's to help keep the duty cycle high. When you're plugged into 220, 240 volts, you get a 60% duty cycle at 250 amps and a 100% duty cycle at 200 amps. And when you're plugged into 110, 120 volt, you can still go up to 150 amps at 100% duty cycle and 120 amps at a 60% duty cycle. I'm gonna get all my pieces ready to try out all these settings on. And to get them stuck together, I'm gonna try out this machine's spot feature. That's just turned on right here. And then you can see that it puts it into 2T mode, which is, you know, a 2-step trigger. So you could use the foot pedal or the torch trigger. I'm gonna turn up my amps because it is a quick. For this one, I do actually want to turn on a little bit of pre-flow, for that way when I hit the trigger, it starts flowing a little bit of gas before it just does the tack. I am noticing that as I'm going along these, I have a 10-second post-flow, and if I start the next tack before that is up, I don't have to wait that pre-flow time. I'm just going to use my pedal as my trigger. This would work the same if you had a trigger on here. Same exact thing. The pedal is not actually doing anything through its movement. It's only going to be on the arc strike, just like pushing the trigger that would come on the torch. I'm going to keep it in 2-step mode. Check the settings here. Turn the post flow down a little bit. So we have 5 amps to start, half a second ramp up, 90 amp peak, a half a second downslope, 3 amps at the end. That's what we should be at. Now when you're in 4-step mode, when you first hit the pedal, it goes to this part of the slope. When you release the pedal, it's going to run up this time. Once the time is up, it's going to be at the max amps. And then when you hit the pedal again, it's going to run the downslope time and finally finish at your end amps until you release the pedal again, or the trigger. I think the pre-flow setting is the most important when you're using a trigger type setup. That way you can just hit the trigger or the pedal and have it start to pre-flow and then start the arc automatically. I like that you can adjust the start amps and the end amps separately on here. It's worth noting that the end amps, the lowest you can go is 3, and the lowest you can go on the start amps is 5. Since you have that adjustability in 4-step mode, you could actually set the start amps pretty low and strike the arc, get situated, your helmet hopefully auto darkens, you release, you're at full amperage, welding along, and say you're welding something that absorbs a lot of heat. Well, you can set that amperage pretty high and then set your end amps a little bit lower. So as you travel along and you start building up too much heat and you see that you would need to back off, you can hit the trigger again and step down into those final amps and finish it off, and then release and the arc stops and you're done welding. The next thing I want to take a look at is the pulse functions. That's switched right here. This is the standard AC/DC mode. It is worth noting the advanced AC mode, which we'll take a look at later. To get back to pulse off, you have to cycle through advanced AC, which moves you into AC. And then when you go to off, you are still in AC. That's bitten me before, so you just need to pay attention to that and switch it back to DC if you're trying to just go from DC pulse to no pulse, still in DC. While in the standard DC pulse, all your adjustments are right here. Starting down at the bottom, this is the pulse frequency in hertz, so how many pulses per second. So right now it's at 1 pulse per second. The next one is the bottom of the pulse. So right now it's gonna cut all the way down to 5 amps. And then the one above that is the percentage that it'll be at those low pulses. So right now we're at 50%. So it's gonna be at 50% at 5 amps and 50% at 90 amps. If I was going to try and add the rod each time it hit max amps, I think I would lower the time it's at the bottom and increase the time that it's at full arc strength. That's one way to use pulse. Another way to use pulse is to up the frequency a lot, and then you just weld normal, and you kind of use it as a heat reduction. So you can go all the way up to 500 pulses a second. So we're going to see what that looks like. I don't know if I would go this high, but a higher frequency like this can help keep heat out of a part, especially if you have thin material. Alright, I couldn't see anything visually on the arc, but the piece was actually vibrating, and the 90 amps does not feel like 90 amps. So that's kind of what I mean by keeping the heat out. For normal operation, normal for me, is just a pedal, which means right now we're at 90 amps. I'm going to turn pre-flow off because I'll just hit my pedal, get the gas flowing, and if I push the pedal all the way down, we're at 90, and I can roll off the pedal and be anywhere between off and 90. Okay, I switched the torch over to do some AC welding on this 1/8 inch aluminum, up the amps a little bit, and switch it to AC advanced square wave. Right now, spot is on. I have my AC frequency set to 120 hertz. My balance set to 30%. This is 30% clean, 70% penetration. Some welders, like I would set it to 70% because it shows you the penetration number, but on this one it shows you the cleaning side of it. I'm gonna set the spot time for a second and see how that works. Okay, it could be a little longer. I'll do 2 seconds. You could do that with your pedal, but if you were doing a lot of tacks, it would be nice to have the set timer, and hopefully it would keep all your tacks exactly the same size. So this welder has 4 different types of waveforms you can use. This is advanced square wave. soft square. Triangle. And sine wave. I immediately noticed that soft square and sine felt like it was putting in way less heat than advanced square and triangle, just to me. So if I was going to use those, I would up the amperage on those, I think. I guess it depends on what you're doing and personal preference on which one of those you like. And then another cool feature is this machine actually has pulse AC. There's the standard AC, but then there's an advanced AC. The advanced AC, Everlast says, has the ability to weld up to 25% thicker material than what that amps would normally be able to penetrate into, and then can also weld even thinner stuff. I'm gonna put it in standard AC, and we'll try both. I'm going to try to increase the time that it's at max amps. Do 20% here. Okay, so once I got it dialed in there, something that I found interesting is this right here shows pulse time on and then pulse amps. So right now the pulse amps is set really low. So this is the pulse amps percentage. It's the percentage of your max amps that it's going to pulse down to. And then it has an arrow up here for pulse time on percentage, which I thought meant for how long it would be in that lower, but it's actually the percentage of time that it's going to be in the max amps, if I'm reading it right. So I put it at 70%, and now 70% of the time it's at our 150 amps, which ended up being a little hot. I want to try one more quick one with lower max amps. That way I can get a good baseline when we switch over to the advanced AC. All right, that was better. Now I'm going to switch over to the advanced AC. So that felt like it was completely cutting it off at the bottom. So I turned up my bottom pulse amps percentage and see if it still does that, if that's part of it. That's pretty interesting. It's not turning it all the way off. It's keeping the arc lit, but very, very, very slightly. I could definitely see if you were going along some really thin aluminum how that would keep some heat out. Well, I think that about covers it for the Everlast PowerTIG 255 EXT. One thing worth noting, up here I mentioned we have 9 memory slots. Slot number 1 is typically my steel slot, but now that we've dialed in aluminum here and the pulse aluminum, say I want to save slot number 1 for my aluminum pulse. All you have to do is hold down this button for 3 seconds. This light will light up and let you know that it's saved. If you want to go to another one, cycle to there, adjust your settings, hold it down, it saves it. You have all that all the way through 9. So with all this adjustability, it's nice to have that many memory slots. Thanks again to Everlast for sponsoring this video. I will leave a link to them down below, as well as a direct link to the 255 EXT. If you order through those links, it just lets them know that you heard about them here. And if you use Voss at checkout or in the comments section on a unit that comes standard with a foot pedal and torch, you will receive that upgrade to the Nova torch and foot pedal. So thanks again to Everlast. If you're new to my channel, I make welding and fabrication videos. I hope you stick around and subscribe. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, you can check out this one right here. And I'll see you next time.